On 4, Royal Canadian Legion General Stewart Branch Number 4 Annual Flag Day Raising Ceremony.
They certainly increase the volume in here or something. Anything else? Seeing none, can we have a motion to accept? Pause. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. The minutes of the January 15th meeting, are there any errors or omissions? Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move the minutes of January 15th.
Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Let's move down to G1, and that is the introduction of the new development officer, Celina Newberry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Council. I'm pleased to introduce you to Celina Newberry, who is covering off a term mat leave, as Sarah Mitchell is now a proud new mother. Sarah grew up in southern Alberta, so she knows the area relatively well. To date, she has spent most of her working life in the service industry, and most of that in the Lethbridge area. So she's familiar with the Lethbridge area too, which has been really an asset so far. But she decided that she needed a change in career, so she went back to school and got her degree from the Urban and Regional Land Use Studies at the University of Lethbridge in 2018. And she completed an applied studies, kind of similar to what Martin does here. She did that applied studies for the town of Tabor, which gave her a lot of exposure to municipal work. So she's familiar with how municipalities work and how we operate. And then she wants to put her education, well-deserved education, into practice. So she's taking this opportunity to gain some knowledge and hopefully develop her career. So we're very pleased to have Celina here with us.
Thank you, and welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm very happy to be here, and I've so far learned a lot in the first week, and I think I'll learn a lot more.
She's a quick learner, so.
So if we just want to go around and introduce ourselves, and we know who you are.
Yeah,
right?
you know me.
I'm Claude Henry, Councillor of Division 6.
Okay.
Paul Horvath.
Thank you.
Warner Zinstra, Division 7.
Tori Campbell, Division 2, South Cooldown. Steve Campbell, Division 5, out in Nobleford area. Welcome.
Thank you.
And I'm Warren Hickey, Division 1, which is kind of south of the jail road, as we call it,
Okay.
in the county of Warner.
Yeah, we've already done a little bit of touring around the county, so she's getting very familiar with those little nooks and crannies. So.
Okay, like I say, welcome, and nice to have you on board.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. So let's move on to planning and development annual report, pages 9 to 10.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just updating council on kind of what happened in 2019. I know we're already well into 2020. It seems like a distant memory sometimes. But we had a fairly busy year last year. We were working on a number of projects. So we did finish, as you may recall, the Turin and Iron Springs Hamlet studies. And the Shaughnessy and Diamond City Hamlet studies have been started. They're nearing completion, so those will be brought forward to council in the next couple months here for your review and consideration. We did complete all of the rural to rural IDPs, intermunicipal development plans, so that's with the MD of Willow Creek, Vulcan County, County of Warner, and Cardston County. And we also are working towards finishing the Barrens IDP. That's going to be, the draft is completed and should be coming to council at the next meeting just for our initial review of that draft. We did update the Hamlet Industrial District to allow for some additional uses, allow for some more flexibility in that particular land use district. We updated the MDP and the land use bylaw with regards to the solar collection facilities. We started the group country residential land use strategy, and it's getting there. I got everything, kind of the components together, so I'm hoping to present it to council in the next couple months also.
March, April, maybe.
Yeah, I think so.
It's on somebody's desk for us to review too.
No names being called out.
Names being made.
We also started the subdivision and road realignment for the CP station lands in Turin. So that was, county council approved the subdivision for there, where we're looking at creating some more industrial lots. And then also, we had to realign the road there because it didn't match where the actual road was. So Scott has been working with me on that, and hopefully that will be coming forward relatively soon, probably in the next few months also. And I also presented, and it was approved, the Environmental and Municipal Reserve Policy. With regards to the Development Authority, we received 180 applications. This was an increase from 2018, when we had about 178. So not too much of an increase, but I think we're kind of heading on that slope right now, we're going up instead of down. We also had, our construction value was significantly higher. We had some fairly large projects come into the county, two of those being the solar projects, and then also the wind energy conversion project, which is in the southern part of the county. So those kind of accounted for a large amount of that increase in development permitting value. With regards to the permits themselves, as you can see, there is, majority of them are for residential uses at 47, followed by accessory buildings, commercial buildings, agricultural, and then we had a number of home occupations, which is maybe a sign of the economy at the time. Lots of people are looking to start home-based businesses, and that's always good because they usually start as incubators and then they grow and hopefully develop into larger businesses in the county. We also issued 44 letters of compliance. Those are when you sell property, generally a bank will require a letter of compliance ensuring that the buildings and use of the property meet the standards of the county's bylaw. With regards to building permits, it was pretty much the same as last year, a little bit lower, but 560 permits for the safety code. So that's building, plumbing, gas, electrical, and septic. Were not necessarily approved, but submitted and under review. Subdivision and development, there was 29 applications reviewed, 28 of them were approved, one was refused by county council. We had one appeal last year, and that was early on in the year, so that's pretty good for the county. With regards to redesignations, I'm not going to go through all of those redesignations, but 14 rezonings have been heard by county council, 13 were approved, one was refused, and then 2 are in process at the end of 2019. And we have a number of new ones kind of in the queue for this year already. For area structure plans, 2 amendments to, one new amendment to an area structure plan was approved, and also the Aylman area structure plan, which was north of the city, was also approved. We're still pending information on that airport area structure plan, which is deemed done by the city. So they haven't given me an update on that, so I don't really know where it's at. Maybe they shelved it for now. I know that they're doing a lot of work out at the airport with regards to their marketing and stuff, so.
Go ahead.
Just a question, what specific information? Is that the stormwater plan that we're still waiting for?
Yes.
Information on that?
Yeah, specifically, we requested that they had to complete a full stormwater plan for that area, just to account for the increase in impervious surface. And I think that's still something that they're pondering across the street. With regards to intermunicipal relations, we did an amendment to the Nobleford Lethbridge County IDP, which was approved. The town of Picture Butte, as you know, submitted their notice of intent to annex the lands north and east of the town of Picture Butte. And that's going through the process through the municipal government board right now. The town of Colehurst and Lethbridge
So
counties.
here's the question on that, if I may.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So they're proceeding on the annexation. What the county got to do? You just sit back and see where your proceedings going?
So generally what happens is county council in principle agreed to the terms of the annexation, and so they presented that to the municipal government board, and so now it's in that process. So we wait to hear from the decision of the municipal government board. I do believe because it wasn't a contested annexation, there will not be a hearing on that. Only if it's contested, but they actually hold a hearing, such as the one with Coaldale back in 2018, where it was a contested application, and they hold a hearing, which elongates the process essentially. So, but this one, the landowners nor the county, it wasn't contested, so it's a smoother process that way.
Yeah.
I realize it's smooth, but I mean, is that willingly from our side, or is there gonna be some questions raised? Why the annexation?
No, because they presented a growth study that showed that the lands that they were proposing to annex met the terms of their growth study.
So what about our growth? You can go around and around and around.
I can't.
Sooner or later, you gotta get off the merry-go-round. But anyway,
Yes.
just a question. So the Coaldale one, it wasn't the county who lodged the formal complaint to get her out?
No,
It was an individual, wasn't it?
it was a number of residences who were in that annexation area that contested it.
But we were asked to come,
And speak, yes.
yeah, I forget why.
Just because we are the municipality that's being annexed, so then they ask us to present why we were supportive of it and to potentially address some of the concerns of the people who were contesting that. I do believe when I did that, it was a fairly short presentation to the municipal government board, but I was there and present for that hearing.
Well, I remember being there, and
Yeah.
they were, actually came up and after and questioned us as to, was it really true that we didn't object?
Yes, yeah, oh yeah, yeah. They like confirmation, for sure.
Because they couldn't really believe it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, no problem. And then, as I mentioned before, we're doing the municipal development plan with Barron's. We had our last meeting with that committee just last week, Monday, I think, and that went well. So our next council meeting, I'll be presenting that draft so that we can carry on with the public consultation. And, oh yes, the Colehurst and Lethbridge County Joint Area Structure Plan has been, the draft has been submitted, and I do believe that the Old Man River Regional Services Commission was just finalizing a couple of areas of that plan, and then it'll be reviewed, it'll be sent to the committee for a final review, and then eventually on to the rest of council for consideration. So I do believe that is everything. I do note that in my printed copy of the report, my lovely chart that I usually include is not there. I apologize. Put a lot of effort into that.
Hillary, can you just, what are we thinking about time frame for the group country residential? Did you say March or April?
I would say that probably looking into April.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Are there any other questions of council regards to the 2019 Planning and Development Report?
If there's no other questions, if we have, please have a motion. Bob? Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Thank you, Hillary.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
So we had a public hearing scheduled for 9:30, but it has been deleted from the agenda because of some conflict with the advertising,
Yes.
and it'll be scheduled to March the 5th. Okay,
What was, if I may, what was the problem on the advertising?
We missed it.
you
We missed it.
you need a month's notice, right?
Yeah.
We need a month's notice and we missed the date.
Yeah.
By 29 days.
Okay, let's do on to KH1, Bylaw 20-002, and that is from rural agriculture to business-like industrial. First reading.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah, I lost my train of thought there for a second. So this, as mentioned, this is just first reading of this bylaw, and let me get my second order.
Which one was it, I'm sorry?
H1.
H1, yeah, it's, bylaws 20-002. And it is right by the town of Nobleford, so I'm just gonna scroll there so you can kind of get an idea of where this location is. I'm sure, most of you are already familiar with this particular, business in the county. It's, Precision Cabinetry. So here's Nobleford over here, here's Outlook Acres, and then here's Precision Cabinetry. So this area right here. So from what I understand, the landowner is wishing to sell their property, and the potential new buyer would like to have the opportunity to have some different uses contained within that building. Right now it is zoned rural agriculture, and so under rural agriculture, it's somewhat limited in commercial and industrial uses that they could have on that property. And in previous discussions with the town of Nobleford, and actually one of the amendments we made to the intermunicipal development plan last year was to consider this particular area for commercial and industrial, light industrial uses. And both councils agreed to that, and it was adopted as part of that intermunicipal development plan. So with that, the potential new buyer is proposed to amend the land use bylaw for 16 acres of this property, so just not the whole property, but the area around the existing structure, to business light industrial. This amendment, as mentioned, is consistent with the policies that we have in the IDP with Nobleford. This application will be circulated to the adjacent municipalities, so Nobleford, county departments, and other external agencies for their review. And those comments will be submitted at the time of the public hearing, which I anticipate will be the second meeting in March. Are there any questions of council?
So, go ahead, boss.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. That parcel there, if I'm not mistaken, we discussed that with the IDP committee with Nobleford, that if further development was going to be done there, the access to that property would come from the gravel road.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, through to Councillor Vanderveen, that is the discussion, and I did tell the applicant that if they want to expand their existing, add new structures or expand the existing business, that more than likely their access would have to be moved onto the range road instead of coming off the highway. This is, as you're probably all aware, it's kind of in a sloped area, so the sight lines coming out of that driveway aren't particularly good. That would also be done in consultation with Alberta Transportation. Right now it's kind of minimal traffic, and if the use they propose is of the similar, it would probably stay, but as soon as they intensify that use, it would have to be moved. So, yeah. So they are aware of that.
So Hillary, is the area in white, and does it go back down to the little reservoir there, or is it, I'm not quite sure where it is. You kind of.
Oh, the area?
Yeah.
Can you circle property?
Yes, sorry, in your agenda package, is it, sorry, Councillor Campbell, was page 8?
Yeah.
Yeah. It shows the actual area that they're proposing to be designated, and it's 16 acres.
So it does include that little reservoir, or whatever that is. That
This one down here?
No, the
Oh,
other one.
right here?
No. Down further? By the 4?
Oh, no.
That's wrong.
This is a separate parcel. They're looking to just, following this white line straight across and going up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that reservoir is tied to the residence that's to
Okay.
the south there.
I got you. So it's the area in the hatch.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
So, and one question then that comes to my mind is, when you go to the next stage, do you do tests like, because it's a pretty low lying area, so what
Yes,
happens there?
Yeah, so if they were, generally with commercial and industrial uses, they don't do your conventional septic systems. So they would use pump out systems anyhow, but if they were wanting to do something more, robust, they would have to do some soils analysis to ensure that they wouldn't be impacting the water table there. That's,
Actually, I really wasn't thinking of that part of it so much. I was just wondering, does water ever sit there? And, so would they be kind of like in a flood zone?
the water, from what I recall, this area all slopes down towards the tracks, and you can kind of see where the alkaline is in this image here.
Right?
This area is higher. I don't believe that that business
No,
has ever been underwater.
That's okay there.
But down here, there's water.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's outside of the zoning area. That's just gonna stay agriculture.
Yeah, it's just, it looks like there's a couple of really low spots in the picture.
Yeah, that is something that if they're planning a new structure, we would get them to do a grading and drainage plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, we can use a motion for first reading. Ken? Any further discussion? Call for the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Can't do it now. Yeah. Okay, let's move on to J1. And which is, Forest and Prairie Protection Act, Mutual Fire Control Agreement, Mutual Aid Agreement.
Sorry there.
Let's get questions here after. Okay, Larry, sorry.
That's
Go ahead.
fine. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, members of council, everyone else present today. So we're at item J1 on the agenda, and this report is about Forest and Prairie Protection Act Mutual Aid Fire Control Agreement. Lethbridge County currently has a mutual aid fire control plan and agreement with the Ministry of Ag and Forestry. That agreement, which has been in place since 2013, is set to expire at the end of this month. And we strongly recommend that we enter into a new agreement and allow it to continue on an indefinite basis. That will actually be our recommendation, Mr. Chairman. Just touch a little bit on the previous council direction and policy with respect to this. Again, just noted that since September 2013, so what's that, just over 6.5 years, we have had this agreement, and we're not really looking to change any of the terms of it, but rather, again, just to kind of renew it and carry on with it. We were visited by staff from the ministry back in, I think it was about late October, and they brought forth the fact that this agreement is set to expire. Talked a little bit about, the value and the benefit that they see in it, and the value and benefit for Lethbridge County to continue to work together in the most effective and efficient manner that we can regarding prevention and fighting of wildfires in the county and the surrounding area. Alternatives, obviously we could let the agreement expire. We're not recommending that. With respect to financial impact, there's really no direct financial impact. The only thing I could really see occurring is there would be benefit should we require their mutual aid to respond to a major wildfire event. And then in that case, we would have set and established protocols for calling resources out, sharing resources, the billing that comes afterwards, set, preset, established fees and so on. So there would be no arguing, well, that machine should only cost $500. Why is it being billed out at $700 an hour, for example? So in summary, that's really what it comes down to. We have this agreement. I don't believe it's ever been invoked or utilized since late 2013, just before I came to Lethbridge County. But again, it's there in the event that there's a major event in Lethbridge County, just outside of Lethbridge County, in the area that's subject to the agreement, or, you know, a combination could be straddling the boundaries. And again, it's just really all about working together with the province, who have, you know, greater resources certainly than the county does, and all, again, in this together, trying to develop those strong relationships and keep our world safe, essentially. So that is the report. You know, if council is satisfied with this, what we look to do is sign the agreement, which is attached to the report. And then the actual mutual aid control plan is fairly lengthy, has lots of details in here, lots of maps and so on. It's probably too much to include in the agenda, but we do have that available. By signing the agreement and agreeing to that, that would really just empower the terms and conditions in the mutual aid fire control plan.
So I think, Larry, one of the benefits you didn't talk about was, by having this agreement with them, you can call in the water bombers on a lot easier schedule than you can if you don't have it.
Yeah, I think exactly, you're right. And I didn't touch on that specifically, but absolutely, I mean, clearly no municipality has water bombers, but the province does. They're already on standby, and there's protocols and forms, in fact, that we can request, this is what we need, and send it to them. And again, those, you know, I think the whole agreement, the intention is to streamline and you know, expedite requests for resources in a worst case scenario. So you're exactly right, Mr. Chairman. Yeah.
Because when we had to call them in before, we weren't a member of this.
Okay.
And it was a little more rigorous process, even though they were sitting on the ground doing nothing in Fringe Creek.
Yeah. Wow.
Plus,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So with your recommendation here, it says that it's going to be, the agreement is going to be in effect indefinitely. So that means we wouldn't have to do this next year anymore unless one of the two parties comes and has some changes they want to make or discuss it.
Mr. Chairman, through to Councillor Vanderveen, precisely. Yeah, just meant to carry on an indefinite basis, you know, perhaps in another, you know, 5 or 7 years, you know, the world, our political and the world and structure maybe has changed, some other things, climate change continues, you know, it might be an opportunity or a need, or it might be fair to just have a look at it and review it again. But otherwise, you know, barring anything unexpected or irregular, status quo, move ahead, have this document in place should we ever need it.
any other questions? Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since we don't have, or since we contract fire departments, do they need to sign an agreement like this? Or is this sort of just an agreement for things within our boundary? And if our towns and villages did it, it's kind of within their boundaries, sort of the reason for the agreement?
Again, Mr. Chairman, through to Councillor Campbell's question, in this mutual aid fire control plan, it lists the contracted agencies that the county has for firefighting services. So in other words, all the municipalities in our region, the 5 smaller ones, and then the city of Lethbridge as well. And so they're acknowledged as being kind of our resource. So if we call them, as we do now, you know, when there's an incident in Lethbridge County, they go out on behalf of Lethbridge County. So it wouldn't be any different. Just if there was mutual aid required and requested by the province for somewhere outside of our boundary, they asked us, we would, you know, check with these individual departments, are you available? Yes, you are. So on behalf of Lethbridge County, off you go, please provide the assistance.
Okay, thank you.
Hope that answers you. Welcome.
Yes, it does.
Any other discussion? Need a motion now. Dory?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd move the recommendation that the mutual aid fire control agreement with the Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry be renewed and thereafter remain in effect indefinitely unless otherwise terminated by either party.
Any other questions? Seeing none, call for the question. Those in favor, those opposed, carried. Thank you. Well, when you're here, might as well do the Director of Emergency Management Agreement renewal.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So item J2 on your agendas, you will see that report. The executive summary really simply that a year ago, basically February 1st, 2019, Lethbridge County entered into a 1-year agreement with the town of Coaldale for them to provide Director of Emergency Management services to Lethbridge County. We did that, I think, on somewhat of a trial basis, hence the fact it was only for 1 year. That, you know, we needed time to kind of test it, see if it served the county's needs well, and I think it has, in fact. Our recommendation today will be that Lethbridge County and the town of Coaldale agreement for emergency management support be renewed from February 1st, 2020, a week ago now, I guess, actually, in retrospect, to January 31st, 2022, so a 2-year period at an annual cost of $40,000, which is the same amount that we paid for year 1 of this agreement. I've already touched on kind of the history a little bit there. With this agreement, the town provides a director of emergency management, so an individual person who is assigned that role. In this case, I think you've all met him and know who he is, Clayton Rutberg. He's a deputy fire chief for the town of Coaldale. He's director of emergency management for the town of Coaldale, and through your appointment and through this agreement is the appointed and assigned director of emergency management for Lethbridge County as well. So although he's not a Lethbridge County employee, he kind of functions temporarily as such when he's providing services in any capacity to Lethbridge County. And then in-house we have 3 deputy directors of emergency management at this time. So our perspective is that without an in-house full-time emergency services manager or coordinator, as the county previously had, this agreement provides the county with the expertise and the experience necessary to effectively oversee and develop our overall emergency response plan, and ultimately, and really when the fire or disaster hits, giant flood, whatever the case, we have that expertise. The experience again is extremely valuable to Lethbridge County. Clayton, I think he has his Masters of Emergency Management from either Justice Royal Rose. Yeah, very good. So he does this day in, day out, full time, 365 days a year kind of thing. That's what he does. He's very good at what he does. And I think that depth of knowledge and experience is really valuable resource for Lethbridge County, whereas if we were to do it in-house, those of us who are deputy directors of the management of emergency management, we do it, and certainly we do our best and work hard to be as trained as we can, but we don't do that all the time. We just don't have that level of expertise when disaster hits. I'll just touch maybe briefly on some of the services that the Director of Emergency Management through the town of Coaldale provided to the county over the past year. There was some ICS, or Incident Command System 100, in-house training for staff, and that's a requirement for all staff at Lethbridge County to have. There were 3 Emergency Operations Center training sessions for staff. You will all recall the September 2nd train derailment near Nobleford, or between kind of Monarch and Nobleford out that way. And Clayton was there and managed that and was in the ECC with many of you here today. He also has reviewed the county's emergency management bylaw, reviewed the county's emergency response plan, implemented a new emergency notification app for cell phones for EOC staff. That's very handy. We've used that several times for smaller incidents. Attended regional emergency response personnel meetings, kind of there on behalf of Lethbridge County, and provided expert and timely guidance and advice to county staff in regards to fire, emergency, and disaster response matters. Often, I'll send them an email and ask them a question or just ask for some advice and guidance, and he's been very good and very helpful, very valuable to Lethbridge County in getting back to us and providing that oversight and expertise that we need. Alternatively, we could discontinue this agreement, of course, and maybe appoint a Director of Emergency Management from our existing staff complement. We could, again, not renew it and hire a full or part-time Director of Emergency Management from the community at large, be another option. Or our preferred and recommended option today, Mr. Chairman and Council, is that we renew the existing agreement with the town of Coaldale for a 2-year period. Financial impacts, alternative 1, that is discontinue the agreement and appoint a DEM from existing county staff. Certainly we would save that $40,000, but our ability to respond to disasters would be diminished, as we just wouldn't have the, again, as I touched on, in-house expertise and experience in especially in the event of a major event. Alternative 2, and that is to look at maybe hiring part-time or full-time someone from outside and bring them in as a new staff member. You know, those price ranges and potential costs you see under Alternative 2, they're very rough, but a part-time DEM maybe would cost $30,000 to $40,000, something like that. While a full-time DEM would cost in the $65,000 to $80,000 range. And you know, the way we have it set up, and I think part of the reason why the county emergency management program structure in-house has changed is we didn't necessarily feel that having a full-time director of emergency management was, you know, maybe the best expenditure of county resources at this time. So our final alternative, and it aligns with the recommendation, is that $40,000 for each of the next 2 years would be a very predictable cost to Lethbridge County, as well as to the town of Coaldale, will provide that consistency, continuity, and a proven high level of emergency response management capability for Lethbridge County. Again, as well, having such an agreement with the town fits very well under the county's strong working relationships strategic pillar, as outlined in the council's 2019 to 2022 strategic plan. I have attached with this report a copy of the agreement, and again, nothing has changed fundamentally from the year 1 of the agreement, really just the dates, as obviously they, you know, that's the only piece, but again, fundamentally nothing would change. So there we have it, thank you.
So Larry, just underneath the item number 6, terms of agreement, it says it will go from February the 1st, 2020 to January the 31st, 2022. But when you go down to cost of service, it doesn't extend to 2022.
I see, yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. With that, what we've done there, we could have laid it out a little differently, maybe made it easier to understand, but in the first agreement, we paid quarterly, so February 1st, $10,000, May 1st, $10,000, and so on. So 4 times for the year, 4 times 10 to 40,000. So the kind of left-hand side of A, B, C, and D are meant to cover the 2020 year. And then the right-hand side, if you'll see, for example, under A, February 1st, 2021, and so on down the line. If you look at that last one, D, November 1st, 2021, that would be for the next 3 months. So November and December of 2021, up to and including January 31st of 2022.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
It does, it's just the way it's written, I guess, because if you look at it, we pay February the 1st, 2020 to February the 1st, 2021, you said you're only paying $10,000. So then why are you paying, again in May, $10,000 to go to May? Like it's, maybe could have been worded, just, it's kind of confusing.
Yeah, I apologize for that.
I just, doesn't,
Yeah. In retrospect, we maybe could have, maybe should have, and it would, I think it might have been clearer had we done A, B, C, D for this year, E, F, G, H for the next year with those dates, you know, but that's what it's intended to state,
Okay.
yes, but your point is well taken.
and just one other question. So, have you ever asked the city of Lethbridge if they could provide this service, and what would their cost be? And like, is it in the same ballpark figure, or do you know that, or have you ever talked about it with them?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Not directly, we have not. No, if you recall, when the first agreement was established, it was brought forward to us proactively as an offer by the town of Coaldale. We didn't go out to them and say, hey, would you guys be able to, or might you be interested, or what would it look like? They again came to us. So, you know, all things considered, you know, the answer to your question is no, we haven't with the city of Lethbridge, just the town of Coaldale to this point. Maybe something we could look at in the future.
We've had some high-level cursory discussions with them, and they had mentioned, I think it must have been about 8 months ago, that there wasn't interest in the time because they were stretched thin, but we certainly could revisit it.
Okay, and
Larry wasn't involved in those discussions.
And then I have one more question, and that was in regards to, when you talked about when we had our own director, or whatever, head guy, what was the difference? Because that person never left the building. So if the 3 you have trained never leave the building, somebody else still has to do it in the field, you know what I mean? Cause Daryl never went out to the site,
No.
so I'm just kinda wondering what the difference is.
Sure, I'll try to answer that. So, just like with the train derailment that occurred on September 2nd, we activated our Emergency Operations Center, and Clayton, as our DEM, simply came from wherever he lives, I believe in the town of Coaldale, given that he works out there, came to us and was in our ECC and kind of directed the response that way. The same as the previous staff member here would have, simply
Yes.
would have come downstairs and done that. Does that answer, or?
Well, I guess that's my point, so if you have 3 people who could do that, why are you hiring the other one?
Sure. Really, I think simply for depth of management. Again, the 3 people who are currently appointed as deputy directors of emergency management, you know, we could do this. I don't believe that there's any way we could simply match the level of expertise during a major event, especially that the town of Coaldale provides.
I understand what you're saying there, so my next part of my question is then, when there's an incident like that, it's not the staff who are on the site, the ones in charge? Like, this person here doesn't give any direct orders, do they? They're kind of the collector or gatherer of all the information?
That's right.
The fire chief on site, the first one is the one who runs the show, correct?
Correct, as the incident commander, yes. Yeah, and then they relay information to the ECC,
Right.
and that whole response and resources and so on are planned and coordinated and sent out to the field to deal with it. So, you know, fundamentally, I think the structure and the way we respond is no different than it was when we had that in-house individual than it is now. And just like previously, if there was a major event and the in-house person that the county had wasn't available, then someone else would, as the deputy director of emergency management, have to step up and fulfill that role to the absolute best of their ability. Just like right now, in fact, I think Clayton's away here, going out of town either this week or next week, and if we have a major event, you know, whether it's Ann, myself, or I think Jeremy is appointed at this point, one of the 3 of us will have to step in and again, do our best to manage the event.
Okay. Any other questions? Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't realize the Director of Emergency Management had a bachelor's in emergency management, so it's good to know that there's a real expert that we have available. So I will move that Lethbridge County and the town of Coaldale agreement of emergency management support be renewed from February 1st, 2020 to January 31st, 2022 at an annual cost of $40,000.
Any further discussion? Oh, sorry, Larry?
Yep, I'm really sorry, Mr. Chairman, just a quick addendum to that. Clayton Rutberg actually has a master's degree, so not just a bachelor's, but a master's, so, you know, definitely a high level of training. Yep. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just one addition before you vote. I just wanted to speak to term, because the reason that Larry and I had an in-house discussion before the report was ready, the reason we did put a 2-year term, because we wanted to make sure that when the next council came in, that there would be 3 months coverage, and then we could discuss it with the next council to see if we wanted to continue on this path. So that's why we chose that term, the 2-year term.
Anything else? Call for the question then. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. So let's, might as well do number 3 while you're sitting there.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, the drought one.
Trout Unlimited Canada, request for support. So that organization is a charitable organization that promotes local opportunities for recreational angling, and through the Alberta Conservation Association, they help stock the McQuillan and McVinney reservoirs in Lethbridge County with rainbow trout for the past 20 years. They have estimated that the cost for continuing the stocking program in 2020 is about $28,000, and they're asking for financial support from Lethbridge County for these ongoing efforts. Our recommendation is that a $1,000 donation to the Alberta Conservation Association I confirmed that they would be the receiving organization, not Trout Unlimited Canada. They're kind of more just in a promotional kind of role. But $1,000 be provided to support stocking rainbow trout in the McQuillan and McVinney reservoirs in the county for public recreational angling to be funded from the municipal reserve account. With respect to previous council direction and policy, I think this is one of those ones that kind of falls under that broad umbrella. Council considers such request based on the unique merits of that request. We did receive an email, which is attached there. I imagine you've had the opportunity to see it. It was addressed to Reeve Hickey from Trout Unlimited Canada directly. They were requesting this financial support, again, to promote recreational angling. And the Trout Unlimited Canada organization, they are obviously Canada-wide, and they promote and support fish stocking program in our neck of the woods throughout Alberta through that Alberta Conservation Association. And they have the expertise to do the stocking, but again, are in need of financial resources. So any financial contribution whatsoever from Lethbridge County would help to support local recreational fisheries. I did see a little flash on somewhere on the Municipal World newsfeed the other day that the town of Lacombe has recently provided some support. Actually, they committed to 5 years to provide some ongoing support for this exact same cause. The Trout Unlimited Canada encourage some sort of annual financial commitment, but again, surely any type of commitment, whether it be a one-time or some sort of ongoing commitment from the county to support the fish stocking program would be well received. The Alberta Conservation Association does recognize its partners by including their names and logos on all their website communications and so on, identifying them as playing, and I quote this literally, a vital role in supporting our work to conserve Alberta's fish, wildlife, and habitat. And supporting that program would align with Council's strategic pillars of supporting an outstanding quality of life and as well as developing strong working relationships. There are a few different options definitely on this one for Council to consider. Could contribute $1,000 or some other amount to be funded perhaps from the Council's discretionary reserve. Again, contribute $1,000 or some other preferred amount to be funded from the municipal reserve. And the reason I say that is those funds would be used for a public recreation area, and that's one of those very limited uses that could have funding come from the municipal reserve, and that's in accordance with the Municipal Government Act. Or contribute $1,000 or again some other amount from the where they go, I lost. It's the trouble with reading off the screen rather than a piece of paper. Screens bounce up and down.
Recreation reserve.
Recreation reserve. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes. Or simply, decline this opportunity at this time. We know that, it's a difficult and challenging financial and economic environment we're living and working in these days. So there are some alternatives for you. Financial impact. Council's current discretionary reserve account has a current balance of $89,500. The municipal reserve account has a current balance of $850,000. And the recreation reserve account has a current balance of $341,000. And again, if Council does choose to make some contribution, probably coming from the municipal reserve account, I think would be most appropriate. It's the largest of them all, and it again fits under those limited criteria in the Municipal Government Act that funds can be drawn from that particular municipal reserve account. Reasons for our recommendation is simply that as I just kind of summarized, the reserve account, municipal reserve account has a comparatively high amount of funds and could be used in accordance with the Municipal Government Act to support this financial request.
Well, that's, I guess on your mind.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just to be clear on this is a one-time donation, it's not an annual thing or anything like that. And I do see your reasons for taking it out of the municipal reserve, but in my opinion, it would fit better with the recreational one.
I mean, Mr. Chairman, thank you to Councillor Vanderveen. Your first question was, lost my train of thought.
Annual or?
Yes, thank you. It's up to you, certainly. Our recommendation is a one-time contribution. I know already that, again, the town of Lacombe is committed for 5 years. You could commit for 3, 10, 1, whatever, absolutely your call. Our recommendation, just kind of as a starting and discussion point, was to make a one-time $1,000 contribution here. And with respect to the money potentially coming out of the recreation reserve account, certainly feasible that way. At this point, I think much of the discussion of the funds in that account have been kind of leaned toward and considered in the context of the intermunicipal collaboration framework versus the municipal reserve, which again has different uses.
So I do see where it would make more sense to come out of the municipal reserve, because it's very limited in what you can use that for now after they changed the rules. So, yeah, I think it'd make more sense to come from there, because we already got a heavy demand on the other one. Well, we will have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Was one of the rules in the municipal reserve that it has to be county-owned property, or are we okay just that it's a public recreation area?
Yeah, good technical question. Thank you, Councillor Campbell. It doesn't say county-owned land, but for public recreation, a public recreation area. And, you know, maybe a lawyer somewhere could argue this point, I suppose, perhaps, but the thinking is that, you know, a body of water in Lethbridge County, accessible to the public, stocked with fish. No individual is going to somehow be able to, you know, gain financially by selling, you know, anything, any of the resources that are acquired through any contribution, and that would be the fish. You know, you might be able to catch 1 or 2 fish, good for you, but again, fits, I think, broadly under that umbrella, we would argue, of public recreation.
So that is a good question. Does not the county own a piece of land where Bullen Lake is?
We do.
You do?
We do.
Yeah. And I don't know about the other one. Morris, do you know where that is? It's up by you, isn't it?
Yeah, that's, I know where it is, I've been there many times, yes, it's close to Jason down there,
Yeah.
about a mile west.
But is that the county's land too? No?
No,
I
that's,
don't believe so.
pretty sure that's government.
Provincial government?
But a public recreation area, that.
Okay, it is, that it is.
Yeah.
McCraney.
Yeah. So,
And they do stock that one.
they stock both those lakes in the county. Alonso?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll make a recommendation that $1,000 donation to the Alberta Conservation Association be provided to support stocking rainbow trout in McMillan and the McPhinney reservoirs in Lethbridge County for public recreation angling to be funded through the municipal reserve account.
Is that for just 1 year or for multiple years?
For 1 year. For a one-time donation now.
Okay.
And if we decide to do, then we should talk about it.
Okay. Any other discussion? I'll call for the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
We've got time to do anything else. You want to just take a 3-minute break and we'll get on to
Yeah, sounds good.
subdivisions? Okay.
The land use bylaw. And I will let Steve go through the comments and the reasons for the recommendation.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, as mentioned, this is an application to split an existing title. It's a parcel located just over half a mile northeast of the hamlet of Diamond City, just to the west of the coulees there. And the applicants desire to create a 6-acre and a 7.62 acre parcel. They have constructed a couple years ago a dwelling on the eastern portion there. You can kind of see on the air photo that kind of the brown area there by the number 8. with their new yard, and they're looking to subdivide that and create a new vacant lot that would be on the west side of that. So the 6-acre lot would be the bare land vacant lot proposed. So there's an existing dwelling there, so there was previously soils tested and all that sort of thing for that property and for the dwellings. That part is fine. This land council may be familiar with was that this parcel was zoned for group country residential use back in 2011. And an area structure plan was also adopted for this piece of land. The previous landowners, developers, to the present applicant, did not go through and complete the planning on that subdivision proposal at that time. They had their approvals and such in place, but they decided not to carry through with it. Largely, one of the main reasons because of the stormwater management plan that they had to do and putting in a pond and that sort of thing. So they decided not to go through with that. And subsequently, the subdivision plan wasn't registered, and council rezoned the land from group country residential back to rural agriculture. So at the request of the landowner, but it no longer has that group country residential zoning on the parcel, and it's rural agriculture. So that is the reason why within the subdivision policies for rural agricultural zone land, as you can see in that quarter section, there's some historical subdivisions going on. So this would be if the subdivision is through, there would be 6 titles out of the quarter section, where in the rural agricultural zone land, there's a maximum of 3 that are allowed. During the circulation of this application as well, you can, in your package there, during the referral process, there was some comments that came in from the adjacent landowner to the east, which is item E, in informative, that Mr. Russell put in some written comments because he was going away and indicated he couldn't be here today, but he wanted to express that he has concerns with further subdivision, and that he has concerns with the drainage in this area. He owns the land to the east, and drainage comes through his property, and he's worried about the effects of another lot being there, being developed, or a house putting on there, and additional drainage. As well, he mentions that the culvert where the water goes through that drains into the river has had problems with freezing and resulted in damage to his access and his road. So he has concerns with additional subdivision development going on and how it's going to impact him in regards to the drainage. So his comments are in item E there that you can see. So on this proposal, the applicants are here this morning. Mr. Grisnick, Mr. Grisnick did apply to split it. And I guess he can maybe explain to you his reasons better than me, but he wanted to apply because he felt that 13.62 acres on its own is too large of a parcel for them and their acreage. So he just wants to split an additional title off. He indicated that he didn't want to go through and do any additional subdivisions, so he didn't want to apply to rezone back to group country residential. So it's kind of the basis of why he applied to put this in front of you. And he can speak to the merits of his proposal because he's here this morning, or if you want more information from him. But the application itself, based on the rural agricultural zoning, with that group country no longer being in place, there's a number of issues with that. As mentioned, it'd be another additional subdivision out, which would result in 6 separate titles out of the quarter section. As well, the county's municipal development plan and group country residential criteria, your bylaw, says where there be 3 or more contiguous lots, less than agricultural parcel size, constitutes group country residential use. And this is not zoned for that no longer. As you can see there was a years back in the corner in the very southwest, this title was the parent title to which this was subdivided once before. On the road there's a in the corner there a parcel that was taken out years back previously as well. So this would be an additional subdivision, which kind of constitutes the third, and that group country definition, just on its own, even if it wasn't the other titles already on the quarter section. So those are the resolution for refusal. What the reasons are based on. There's non-compliance for those 4 items that are listed there. During the referral process, other than Mr. Russell was the only neighbor who provided comments in writing. As regards to the utility companies, there was no request for easements or anything like that. And then just LNID commented on the water situation. So, yeah, so with that, the proposal itself doesn't meet the bylaw. If you were to approve it, it would require waivers of a number of your policies. Mr. Risnick is here if you have some questions about his proposal.
So I have a few questions for you. What did you say the small subdivision was for? Over, right there you said it was?
The one in the very southwest was taken out, was subdivided. That was done years back under your resplit of parcel 20 acres or less in size where you can split it once. It was done before, back in 2013, when you reviewed your land use bylaw, there was some additional criteria put in, and one of them was that on the subdivision that kind of capping it at the 3 to prevent these incremental subdivisions where somebody had a 20 acre and subdivided into 2 10s and came back subdivided into 2 5s and came back and subdivided into 2 2.5s, and all of a sudden you had 6 or 8 parcels out there, which constitutes group country, but it was never zoned for that. There was never an area structure plan done for that, or the drainage plan was never done for that sort of thing. So back in 2013, in the definition says if there's 3 or more contiguous, you have to rezone to the group country. So that one was done just under that 20 acre split.
So there's 5 or 6 residents already on the
Correct.
border.
Yeah.
So does that constitute being group country residential on its own?
I don't know, Mr. Chairman, if you recall, this particular subdivision here
Yeah.
was done a few years ago, and county council refused it, and it was approved by the appeal board
Okay.
after the fact. So, yeah, that's the reason why there is 5 now, and 6, and with this one would be 6.
Okay.
Yeah. And as I mentioned, with regards to this parcel, it was, as Steve mentioned, there was that area structure plan and it was zoned group country residential, and then they came to rescind it because they said they wanted to have agricultural uses on there. Because there's a difference between the group country and the rural ag, as you can imagine.
So that little piece, that subdivision on the southwest was not part of the
No.
group country residential?
No, it was always agriculture.
It was always ag.
Yeah.
So then how does the bylaw work? Because says you can resplit parcels less than 20 acres.
So how that works, Mr. Chairman, is that if, say this was the only subdivision out of the quarter section, and it was less than 20 acres, you could resplit that parcel, so then you would get 3 parcels in that quarter section. But you can't split further than that without rezoning to group country residential.
So you'd have 2 country residentials and 1 ag,
Yeah.
the larger remnant of the quarter.
It's to cap the number of subdivisions coming out, and then if you want to do further subdivisions, that's where it goes through that county council public hearing process to go through group country residential. Because you're intensifying that residential component in that area.
So the house by the number 8, is that a new house?
Yeah, that's what they applied for a couple years ago after they rescinded all of the zoning in the area structure plan.
There is one.
Oh, man. Okay, Claus?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, you, like in the beginning with your introduction, stuff like you were talking about that the former owner there, if he would have gone ahead with the subdivided more into group,
Country, yes.
that would have been according to whatever the bylaws are. So now somebody comes in and kind of wants to do the same thing, maybe to word it a little bit different. Is that not just about the same?
Well, no, because there's different regulations. So under that area structure plan, they had to do a drainage plan. They had to account for the drainage of those increased parcels downstream. So they had to, they were supposed to create a swale, they were supposed to increase the ditch sizes, and they're also supposed to create a stormwater management pond, ironically where the house is built. So that was the requirement when that plan was done. So it's not the same because they had certain requirements they had to do. That's why they didn't proceed, because they found it was cost prohibitive to create those, to improve the drainage in the area to allow for those residential parcels to exist.
Well, kind of the other part of that problem was the letter from Mr. Russell, because when the water goes down into the river,
Yeah.
it has to go underneath the road there.
Yeah.
It keeps washing out the road,
Yes.
but it's gonna happen anyways, by the sounds of it.
Which one is, if I may, Russell's property down there?
Sure, just hang on, I will go to that. So they're down in this area.
Oh, yeah.
They own this parcel here, and I think this parcel here.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there is a drainage issue in that area that is obviously pre-existing. It's just, I mean, whether or not, increased subdivision, generally you're creating more hard surface, you're creating more intense flows with regards to the drainage. So that's a consideration. That's what was, because they wanted to do six lots previously for residential use, so that would have been much more intense. But, you know, any incremental increase in that can have a, you know, incremental impact to that drainage system.
Of course.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, like, what we approved previous, of course, that was, you know, without, basically, you know, group residential on there. There was, you know, certain things had to be in place. One of it was your drainage and your area structure plan and et cetera. So this thing, you know, it would make sense to me to go ahead with that, because I don't think it's really gonna have an effect for what it's affecting now. However, if, you know, management or even the rest of council want to see, you know, a certain condition down there, you know, is that possible that we put another condition on it, like a drainage pond down there at the catch basin down there or something like that?
You could require that they do a drainage study or have a stormwater analysis completed for the area as a condition. And you could also require that they do rezone back to country residential as a condition.
Group residential. But you know, the whole thing is piecemeal already anyways, our whole quarter section. We dealt with that one before.
Claus and then Steve.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I think it's not it's not really suitable for agriculture anyway, that little piece there, and I think that if we can get a solution done that we can make that work, I think we should probably try to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Zoning to group country residential, that would be more appropriate now first, wouldn't it be, than approving a subdivision, then doing it later?
Yes, that's correct, Councillor Campbell through the chair. I mean, typically you don't rezone after you've approved a subdivision. You would say you have to rezone and then subdivide, because it goes through a public process, right? So it's then you're informing the neighbors that there's gonna be an intensity of the group country residential in that area. And you're allowing people the opportunity to be informed of that and have be able to speak to that. If you approve a subdivision that's essentially creating group country residential without giving the public that opportunity to speak, can be a bit tricky.
Go ahead,
Given that we're on the cusp of doing a group country residential study for the whole county, would this not take into consideration where we as the county want to see development occur?
Yes, it does look at areas like this that are kind of more fragmented. There would be recommendations in there of how to move forward with these types of parcels. Ideally, you would say that because they're group country, they should be zoned group country, and then they can move forward, because as Councillor Vanderveen mentioned, this, it's a smaller title. It's not like it's prime agricultural land, but it's, I think one of the things that administratively we're looking to is to make it so that we're being consistent in the decision making and being consistent when we're bringing information to the public about what's happening, because nobody has the right to appeal. No neighbor would have the right to appeal or contest a subdivision once it's approved. But they can come to a public hearing and express their concerns to council, and then council can decide, well, these are the merits of this or that or that. And it's to me a little bit more transparent in terms of a process. When you're looking at things that don't follow the policy, there's a way that you can bring it into the policy that make it clearer to the general public what's happening on the parcel.
Steve.
Yeah, so, yes, one of the things is a study or more criterion in group country might help in these situations, but then you also have the situations too on a subdivision. You're sitting here as the subdivision authority, not council technically. So at the same time, an applicant can always apply to the subdivision authority and ask for waivers of bylaw standards, waivers of things, and so you always have some discretion. You're applying your decision making, saying whether you think it's suitable or a good thing or not, because the rezoning process is a council process. So you're always going to have to look at these and apply some thought of if it's appropriate or not, and applying your discretion in that regard. But one of the things too is we can't do on a subdivision legally is we can't put on a condition that they rezone to group country, because that's a council prerogative, and we're dealing as a subdivision authority here. It's your subdivision decisions. You can't fetter that to council on the rezoning. So in a case like this, you'd have to table it and go through that process and then come back and deal with the subdivision. In the meantime, if Mr. Bisnick didn't want to go through that, he could bypass and go to the appeal board, because the subdivision authority, you have to make a decision on this within 60 days of the time he applies. So, so there's always some procedural aspects between council, so zoning and the subdivision application here in front of you as a subdivision authority. But
Any more questions from council? Mr. Bisnick, would you care to speak?
Well, I don't really know what to say. It's, when we bought this and when we started, I started trucking, but this kind of exploded, and I'm actually never home, and the piece is just too big, and there's two potable water units on there that are existing, so there is a separate potable water unit that we're always paying for, we never use, so we thought we would split it up and make the workload a little less, and yeah. And as far as drainage goes, I don't think there'll be any more water running now than there would be if there was two houses on there, because most of the water actually runs into the neighbor to the north of us, except for when the LNID put a pipeline in there, there's a hump in there, so there's always some water sitting there because they cut the natural drain off. but it actually goes to the north, not to the, eventually I think it ends up in the coulee, but not that it runs towards Russell's property.
Okay.
And now I'm irrigating 13 or whatever acres of the property, and if you cut it in half, you'd be irrigating less, so I think there's less chance of runoff.
Klaus?
I move that we postpone it, and that we look at the possibilities of being able to let this be possible.
I think he has to give us a date.
Yeah, more specific.
Like a month, 2 months, but I don't know how that.
Well, I don't know.
What Steve just said, so.
I don't know what staff says here, because staff needs a certain amount of time probably to be able to look through this and come up with some recommendations. So the timeline is probably, staff could give a little.
Just for clarity, Councillor Vanderveen, are you asking us to postpone it and look at rezoning it to group country, or is that what your request is for?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, just for information, the subdivision, the 60 days expires February 14th.
So even before our next council meeting.
Yeah.
So Mr. Grisnick would have to agree to a time extension to go beyond that date.
Well, but Mr. Grisnick's not aware of what all would be involved in going to a group country residential, I don't think, yet.
Well, it's somewhat, it's the same as rescinding the bylaw, go through the bylaw process that they did before.
Oh, okay.
It would take it would take about 2.5 months.
Mr. Grisnick, what do you think?
I don't know what to say. I didn't think it was gonna be this, that it would be that difficult, but I don't know what's all, you know.
So Steve, could we postpone it till the next meeting, and you could maybe have a chat to see what's all involved with the Grisnicks to move forward with this, and they could kind of decide if they wanna leave it as is or move on to the next stage?
Sure.
Does that still work? Could they still appeal it if we don't make a decision that way, or how does that work? Like, he's using the deadline's February the.
Well, Mr. Chair, what happens is after February 14th,
And appeal here.
if you haven't made a decision and Mr. Grisnick hasn't agreed to a time extension, he can deem that you refused his application and take it to the appeal board.
Right.
He can choose not to do that. But then if we were to bring it back on the 20th or to the March meeting or something like that, we would just ask him to sign a time extension, even if it's for 2 weeks or a month or whatever, just to give you the jurisdiction back to make a decision on it. If he's partial to doing that for a couple of weeks or whatever.
Mr. Grisnick?
Does it have to go back to country residential in order to split the property? Is there no way?
I think that's what the discussion needs to happen right now, to see if you would be agreeable to do that. You could find out a lot more details about it. And, but it sounds like right now it's against our bylaws, so we have to make a,
5 or 6 ain't gonna make any difference.
well,
On
we
the
just
part
have
of-
to, we'd have to waive the bylaw if we were to pass it, is all.
Mhm.
So, it's kind of in your court, if you'd like to have the time extension and kind of check the options out, or I know that if you want to sell it, you need to get moving on it too, so.
Well, we would like to sell it if we could.
Yeah.
We'd like to get moving on it if possible.
Just as a point, if it is deemed refused, the appeal board follows the bylaw.
Okay.
Just so Mr. Grisnick is aware, the appeal board is bound by the county's bylaw. It's different than a subdivision authority. The subdivision authority can have the opportunity to waive policy. Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, the appeal board wouldn't have a right to waive a policy.
there's like 6 days
Yeah.
between the 14th and the 20th, which is our next council meeting, correct? So my suggestion is that planning has a conversation with Mr. Grisnick.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that.
Yes.
Is that okay with you?
Yeah, I mean, if the chances are better to subdivide it going that way, then we'll go the way you want us to go.
So it should actually table it till,
Table,
Larry?
You can't.
Postpone to a specific
You
time.
can't table.
why can't you table?
Because table, you gotta make a decision at this, today.
No, that's why you table it, that's why you table it. But if you're gonna postpone it, that's fine.
Larry?
Postpone.
Let's not get into it. So we'll do that, if that's okay.
I'll argue with you now, Larry.
So we have a motion to postpone until February 20th meeting.
I'll move to.
Oh, Claus already did it.
Oh, yeah, no.
So is there any discussion on that? If not, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Sure.
You can go, we don't have to sign nothing, nothing to sign or nothing? Agreement's an agreement like that? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Let's move on to the next subdivision, which is 2019-0-179 DeVores.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The second subdivision for today is for the Northwest 91023 west of the Fort. It is just a half a mile east of Highway 23, and so just a little bit further than that to Monarch, and then 1 mile north of Highway 3. And it is to take a first parcel out of a quarter section consisting of 156.98 acres. This proposal does meet the criteria of the county's land use bylaw. Steve will go through the comments and the recommendation.
Okay, Mr. Chair, hopefully this application is a little more straightforward. This application is to take a first subdivision out for an existing farmyard area in the very northwest corner of the quarter section, 4.8 acre parcel. The landowner resides there. They have a yard with a dwelling, corn shed, tree shelter, belt, some other improvements on there. They're keeping the yard tight to the northwest corner there. It'll be angled on the southeast corner to account for the irrigation pivot on the agricultural land. The property line will just go over to the east where there's an existing approach to the field area. This is an existing yard, so service is already in place. That's not an issue as well. The septic field, once subdivided, will be within the confines of the property, and they take their access from the North County Road. In reviewing this proposal, the MDS and the permit numbers to the livestock operation nearby to the northeast was looked at and confirmed with the NRCB, who indicated that it meets the MDS. Even regardless of that, if it didn't, this yard was here before the CFO was in place. They replaced the existing house on the parcel about 30 years ago or so, but it was an older farmhouse here prior to that, so the yard's been long established in this corner. So in accordance with the bylaw, it meets the bylaw requirements for MDS. So in this application, as part of the circulation, there was no objections or concerns received in writing on the application. None of the utility companies require easement or anything like that. So on that basis, as a first parcel out subdivision, I have recommended approval to you with the standard conditions of taxes paid and up to date, development agreement entered if required, a final surveyor's sketch. I did have a blank utility easement on here. which you could leave on, but, since the application came out to you, most of the utility companies that responded now don't need anything, so. But, so, is there a recommendation of approval with those conditions?
Any questions?
I'll do the recommendation. That's the application 2019-0-179 be approved, subject to the conditions that outlined in the draft resolution.
Any discussion? On the question, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Let's do subdivision extension for 2012, wow, -0-029.
We're predating Hillary here. But yes, this is in accordance with our subdivision criteria, this has to come back for council to approve an time extension. It is for the Albion Ridge colony in the southeast 1912-21 west of the Fort. As per the provincial regulations, they are required in the creating a cemetery that it has to be its own title to the parcel, which was previously approved under 2012-0-029. They did take some time to get their engineering completed for this, just 8 years later. So they have completed all that, and they're coming back now to try and finalize it. So Steve will kind of go through the rest of the background and requirements for this extension.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I hope and anticipate this is it for this one. We now have everything we need on this. It's been a long ongoing process. Cemeteries in Alberta to be registered have to be registered with the province, so they're required to be subdivided, and only the province, a municipality, and a recognized affiliated church organization is allowed to own the title to a cemetery. The Hutterite colonies fall under the religious affiliation. So with that, the municipalities, the county are approving the subdivision. You're kind of one of three parts of the process, because besides your approval, it also has to be approved by the Director of Cemeteries for the province, who have had lots of conversations back and forth with her on this file, and also with the Alberta Health Region, Health Services, because they have some health requirements too in regard to that. So one of the things is that on the cemetery you have to have engineering done, just to confirm the type of soils underneath and the depth to the water table. You have to have enough separation to the water table, so when you're burying caskets, you don't get hydraulic pressure and they're popping up, or that water's infiltrating too and carrying on, and then it gets into groundwater or something like that. So that actually happened when the crow's nest passed, believe it or not. So, but so that's the most important thing, is the engineering part. So just over the years with the colony, they had some difficulty, and there's maybe a communication thing within the consultants. That the original consultant they started with, they didn't finish with. They went to a second consultant. That consultant, 80% through, closed up office here in Lethbridge and moved to Sherwood Park and was no longer involved. So they had to get a third consultant who had to redo some of the engineering and such. So it's just been a bit of an ongoing process. But with that, we do have in the engineer's report now, stamped and sealed, that they meet the requirements that the health services and we're looking for on the cemetery, so they can go through to register it. So I had the colony, they came back a number of times over the last few years, and I always told them to wait to bring a time extension until we actually had everything in, so that we knew it could meet the requirements and it was finished. So we have that now. So now I'm bringing to you the time extension, so hopefully that's the last time that it can get registered. So with that, I do need a council is the one that approves second or subsequent time extension, so I would need a council to approve that.
Morris?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's see, I'll go along with the recommendation that we grant a second time extension to subdivision 2012 for 029 until July 31st, but is that gonna be, they probably never pursued it, eh? I think that's what probably happened. Eh?
Oh, no, they did.
They did?
They just had a lot of hiccups along the way. I've been talking to them for 7 years.
Anyways, we'll give them till July 31st as the recommendation, hopefully.
Any further discussion?
As long as there's no cost to us.
I'm gonna call for the question then. Those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
All right, Mr. Chair, also, I'm gonna ask, change the process a little bit here, do a little bit different in the past, you guys just used to make the motion, and then Lorraine would just send correspondence to us, saying from the minute that you guys approve. But to expedite things, we've started doing here, we're doing this for the other municipalities too, I've done kind of a little resolution here, just to state you guys approved it, and then I can take it back right away, and then I can actually do the endorsement this afternoon, and get it off, whatever. But in this case, I'll just have Ann and Reeve sign it, just the council did it, whatever. Leave you a copy, I'll take a copy. This way
We don't want any other hiccups.
We're done now. Taking the invitations down. Yeah. So let's move to M1, Community Foundation of Lethbridge.
Oh, absolutely. Never know.
Go ahead, Meg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Council. I've got 4 invitations here for you today. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. So this first invitation here is for the Community Foundation of Lethbridge in Southwestern Alberta, Friends of the Foundation Dinner. So an invitation was received from the Community Foundation of Lethbridge in Southwestern Alberta for their 2020 Friends of the Foundation Dinner on March 19th, 2020 at the Coast Hotel and Conference Center here in Lethbridge. The evening includes a dinner and a program. The guest speakers this year are going to be the Boulay family. They'll speak about the newly created Logan Boulay Fund at the Community Foundation. Tickets to the event are $50. And just as a note, the Community Foundation of Lethbridge in Southwestern Alberta has provided grants to various organizations in Lethbridge County this year and in the past. So therefore, the recommendation is that the Reeve or his designate be authorized to attend the Community Foundation of Lethbridge and Southwestern Alberta's 2020 Friends of the Foundation Dinner on March 19th, 2020 at the Coast Hotel and Conference Center.
Is there anybody else who'd like to go? One kind of an honorary signee or whatever they call them over there. We have to approve all the directors and board members. So the mayor and myself, the chief justice, and I don't know who else is on that. So yeah, I probably should go. Okay, need a motion on the clause.
I'll move that the Reeve or his designate be authorized to go.
discussion? Call for the question, those in favor? Opposed, carried. Number 2, the Rotary Club.
Okay, so this next one, an invitation was received from the Rotary Club of Lethbridge East for their 2nd annual Agricultural Scholarship Awards Dinner on February 27th at Exhibition Park, Lethbridge. Two $10,000 scholarships will be awarded to agricultural students of the area here in southern Alberta. Reeve Hickey, Councillor Ken Benson, and Councillor Robert Horvath attended this event in 2019, I believe. And the recommendation is that any member of council wishing to attend the Rotary Club of Lethbridge East Exhibition Park 2nd Annual Agricultural Scholarship Awards Dinner on February 27th, 2020 at Lethbridge Exhibition Park be authorized to do so. Oh, sorry. I just forgot to mention, tickets are $125 each, or a table of 8 can be purchased for $1,000.
Anybody want to go? Morris?
Have we attended that before?
You last year.
Was it last year?
I think it was here before.
Last year was
Last
the
year's
first year.
the first one.
Yeah.
Councillor, Deputy Reeve Benson, Reeve Hickey, and Councillor Horvath attended last year, and I did too as well.
Steve, are you going to the exhibition or?
I don't know.
Oh,
If there's tickets available, I would through there.
well, who would like to go this year? Who would like to go this year? So it goes towards the contribution, towards the scholarship to ag students, so funds raised.
I'd have to check, but, I might like to go because I've always liked to get there.
But
Sorry, I didn't catch the last part of your.
My boys might be getting that advice, so I'd like to go to it.
Is there anybody else wishing to go?
Well, let me go to, I'll go.
Anybody else?
I'm iffy.
I can, I guess, but since you thought I was there before, so.
I didn't,
And I
say you
didn't
were there
really-
before, did I? Okay.
Yeah, I'm iffy.
Well, anyway, we need a motion to send somebody or not send somebody, Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At $125 a ticket, I think the better recommendation would be to just to buy a certain amount of tickets for whoever wants to go, rather than get the $125 ticket and then pay for someone to attend. So if there's 2 or 4 that want to go, whatever, that could be the motion. If we would need to know that now.
Why don't you just say up to 4, or up to 4 tickets?
Okay, that would work. I would make the motion that we purchase up to 4 tickets for council or staff to attend or you're not here, Ann? Okay, for council to attend the Rotary Club of Lethbridge East Exhibition Park 2nd Annual Agricultural Scholarship Awards Dinner on February 27th.
Okay. And we can let Maddie know who wants to go after that.
Yeah. Just on that note, when we're talking about scholarships, I know council has always wanted to have a scholarship policy for ourselves to have a scholarship for different agricultural groups, and our wonderful Jen is working on it internally and will probably come forward to council meeting in March. Jen, do you think?
No, I have a report ready to go for the 20th, but that is specific to the 2 $1,000 student scholarships that we discussed during budget. So I've developed a policy and an application for council's consideration for February 20th.
Separate matter, but I just want to.
Okay. Any further discussion on the motion? Call for the question, those in favor, opposed, carried. And the next one is Coldell District Chamber of Commerce.
So the Coldell District Chamber of Commerce 39th Annual Awards and Appreciation Banquet is scheduled for March 21st, 2020 at the Coldell Community Center. The awards banquet will recognize the contributions of individuals, nonprofit organizations, and businesses to the Coldell community. Tickets are $60 each for this event. Members of council have been authorized to attend this event in the past. Therefore, the recommendation is that any member of council wishing to attend the Coldell and District Chamber of Commerce 39th Annual Awards and Appreciation Banquet scheduled for March 21st, 2020 at the Coldell Community Center be authorized to do so.
Just a question, when's RMA?
16th to 18th.
16, 17, 18. Bless you. March 21st is a Saturday. So it's last Saturday.
So what do you guys want to do here?
Well, we have to send someone.
Klaus?
I'll recommend that any member of council wishing to attend the Coldell District Commerce 39th Annual Awards be allowed to do so. And I would suggest that we go around Coldell.
I was gonna go
Stay up there, and
I was gonna go over yet, because I'm on the board.
Okay, let's just vote on the motion, you can decide later who's going. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, those in favor? Those opposed, carried. You let Maddie know who wants to go. And the last one is the Royal Canadian Legion.
Okay, so last one here. An invitation was received from the Royal Canadian Legion for Reeve Hickey to attend the annual Flag Day ceremony on February 15th, 2020. The event will be held at the General Stewart branch in Lethbridge beginning at 11 a.m. The ceremony is held annually to recognize and honor the Canadian flag. 2020 also marks the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II. Lethbridge County's practice is to attend community events as is feasible and reasonable to maintain our strong relationships within the region. Therefore, the recommendation is that the Reeve or his designate be authorized to attend the Royal Canadian Legion Annual Flag Day Ceremony on February 15th, 2020 at the General Stewart branch in Lethbridge.
I think that I'm fine with all of that, except this is another one of those things, it's like going to Remembrance Day things. I think there's no way you should charge to go to something like this.
You mean as a council?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, I understand.
Tori?
Thank you. I'd agree, Mr. Chairman, so I'd then make the motion that the Reeve or his designate attend the event without being paid mileage or per diems.
Any discussion on that? Call for the question, those in favor? Opposed, carried. I think that's it, other than the closed session.
Thank you, Maddie.
Isn't it?
Thanks, Maddie.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we need a motion to adjourn? No, we have a closed session.